Hello, my name is Ted Strauss, and we're conducting a phone interview today with Jessie Curel, the founder of Hands On Media in Montreal. And Jessie has just returned from a very special conference in the States, the NAMELY Conference on Media Literacy. Hi, Jessie.
Hello, Ted.
So I was wondering if you could just briefly introduce yourself for those who are listening who may not know you, and tell us a little bit about the conference you attended.
Okay, yeah. So we run an organization in Montreal that provides customized media and digital literacy workshops and resources for students, adults, elders, and organizations. We specialize in iPad animation and digital storytelling, but we really do a wide variety of media education work. As we all know, this is a very interesting and important time to be learning as much as we can about the technologies and the internet that we're using so much these days and ever increasing. And so I'm really excited to be working in this field. And I was really excited to go down to Washington, D.C. last week for the NAMELY conference. This is the America's National Association of Media Literacy Education Conference. They hold it every 2 years, and they had about 400 researchers, presenters, and different organizations that were participating, bringing to the fore all of this really amazing work that they're doing in this fake news era. I use that term with air quotes because that term is problematic in and of itself, but it is a very interesting time, especially in the States. I found it very powerful. We even had one of the days of the conference was at the Newseum, which is the Museum on News and Journalism, and it was just it felt so relevant, right? The freedom of the press, the freedom of speech, and unfortunately the museum is closing at the end of the year. So it just felt really important to be there.
And I understand that at the conference, the role of Canadian media was highlighted in some ways. Could you speak a little bit about how Canadian media was somehow distinguished by the attendees at this conference?
Yeah, so in the late 70s, there were a group of Ontario high school teachers that got together to essentially create the foundation of what is media education curriculum in Ontario, which expanded to mandated curriculum across Canada and every province and territory. A theory is that Marshall McLuhan's Global Village theory, medium as a message, that really laid the groundwork for this kind of work to begin, as well as developing a bit of a barrier of critical thinking against mass American productions. So we do have a very strong history and legacy with media education in Canada, and a huge success of that is the mandated curriculum, which unfortunately is not the case in most American states. I think there's about 3 states in America that have curriculum for the kindergarten to grade 12 school system, but it's really not taught the way that it is in Canada. That being said, we still have a lot of work to do in Canada. Just because it is in our curriculum doesn't mean it's being taught regularly or effectively. So I don't want to kind of get too excited about our role right now in the international kind of media education landscape. We do have a lot of work to do, but it was really exciting to be hearing continuously this kind of this theory that America really used to follow in Canada's footsteps in terms of the past and the inroads that we've made with media literacy.
And for someone like me who isn't attending media literacy trainings that often, I do take part in training people on specific media skills. But I guess I'm wondering, as this field is evolving, what are some ways that's changing, the way that young people are being taught, the way that undergrad sort of young adults are being taught, the way that more older adults are being taught and being changing their practices. How is that changing? And as you evolve the way that you teach it, what are some ways that might change? And if that can highlight some ways that Canada's successes are making inroads, that would be really interesting to hear about those details, about specifically, like, because the term media literacy seems to encompass a lot, and I'm curious to know, like, in more precise areas, how that can be brought to bear.
Well, a very simple way to explain media literacy is the ability to use, understand, analyze, and produce media, which of course, either of those four words is very large and complex in and of themselves, and it's a lot. It's a lot to ask someone to be completely media literate, especially in this age of innovation and social media and new tools coming out all the time for us to be using. And unfortunately, and you're asking, how are these media literacy skills taught? Unfortunately, they're not taught enough. And this is what I'm facing in this time with my business, is that I can't keep up. I feel really excited that there's so much opportunity and there's so much need and there's so much interest, but there's only one of me. I have a small team, and it feels like we have so much work to do. The real foundation of media literacy for me is critical thinking, and so you don't need access to digital tools to be critically thinking about the media that we're consuming, and you don't need the internet in your classroom to be teaching that either. Which I want to instill that in teachers, is that there is a responsibility that they do have in teaching this. And it's not just about media, it's about all information. It's for textbooks that we're getting in classrooms, for example. Like, we should be teaching our students to be critically thinking about all the information they're consuming, and it's not about not liking it or disagreeing with it. It's about understanding that was a creation by maybe one person or a team. There were creative decisions that were made. And we don't have to agree with everything, and maybe we can do some other research to back our own idea up, or just to learn more, not just to take one source of information as the truth, which is a major issue in the online space, because we have fake news all over the place in all different contexts, and virtually no one knows how to verify information online, including parents, adults, and elderly. So it's a bit of a tall order to be asking our students to know inherently how to verify information online, when virtually no adult is capable of doing the same.
Right. And I mean, with the U.S. Entering the next election cycle, never-ending election cycle, and the way that things have played out following from the 2016 election, it's clear that there's really no laws or rules that can actually regulate what's happening. Political parties are free to set up, like, as many social media accounts and websites spreading disinformation, and there's no actual, there's no authority to regulate that. And I think the various processes playing out in the U.S. politics have confirmed that. And so, given that there really aren't any consequences, it seems that the standards or the expectations around misinformation have really shifted, and people just expect to be misinformed, or maybe they don't mind to be misinformed in some cases when things sort of like validate what they would prefer to believe. Is that kind of anxiety, was that discussed much at the conference you were at, or how is that being received by folks in this field?
Well, I think that's an important element to it. I mean, and what our education is all about is equipping the students with the skills to know how to assess information. We can't control the environment of the media, and that is not within our scope of power. What we can do is control how we engage with it. So I feel like that is the core of media literacy, and it is inherently tied to democracy. It is inherently tied to a sense of digital citizenship as well, that you are able to effectively use digital tools and the internet to its maximum potential for you with minimized harm.
Mm-hmm.
And
okay.
it's complicated. It's a very there's a lot of aspects to this, right? Because there's also privacy. There's also data collection. There's also this vast, wide world now in the education world where we have access to information like we never have had before, right? Like in terms of the media, it was a few people with quite a bit of funding that were telling their stories. Now, basically, anyone can tell their story with some limited access to some technology, but with that comes an obligation that we all are able to understand that might not be true, which is what right in front of us.
Mm-hmm. So today is July 4th. There may be some fireworks going off as we speak in different parts of the States. So as a final kind of question, is there something, if there was one specific kind of media literacy kind of lesson or learning or advice that you could send to either anyone in the U.S. or a particular group that you might be interested in talking to, what would be that message you would hope that they could think about while they're watching the fireworks go off above them?
I get really excited when I think about the people, and I mean like mass population, being able to maybe take a moment and not consume media, but transform into active creators. There is so much passive consumption of media in this day and age. If it's just mindless YouTube videos or it's music, it's really exciting to me to think about people feeling empowered and important to share their own story. And I know that there's an audience for that, and I believe that it really is an important step in bridging the divide between different groups and helping to foster empathy between people that don't usually interact with each other. I feel like the online space is really helping us stay in our little siphoned areas of the internet, right? We're being fed content that is speaking to our own political leanings and our own interests without being exposed to others very easily unless we like actively seek it out. And I just wish that we would use the internet as best as we can for the greater good and to help learn about each other through video creation.
Through video creation. Okay. So create on 4th of July. Remember to contribute back to what is an ocean of media out there. Jessie Curell is the founder of Hands-On Media Educations. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you so much, Ted. Thank you.